There we go. Got that out of my system.
Awesome. So, Richie, today we're recording the mysterious podcast we talked about.
Are we?
Yes, we are.
Because we have a habit of saying we're recording something and then it just turns into something else.
You know the mysterious preview of us dressed like we're in the 90s in like red and yellow and with blue caps?
Yes.
Well, it's all going to become clear this episode.
Well, in theory.
Yeah. So, can you tell everyone what we're talking about today?
We are going to start another podcast series that is not about the Souls games, and is just about games that we grew up playing.
Yeah.
And because we are about the same age, we are calling it Gaming in the Yeltsin Years. Which is a zany parody of an existing YouTube series called Gaming in the Clinton Years. Should I explain Gaming in the Clinton Years to people who might not be familiar?
Yeah, you should.
Okay, so there was this absolutely bizarre public access show called Flights of Fantasy that was screened in the US. I have no idea where, but it was. And it was hosted by I think he was like a failed stand-up comedian or something called George Wood, who didn't play any of the games. He was just given scripts to read, and he read them in this really weird way. And the scripts themselves were kind of bizarre. And it was like the most famous one he did was he was reviewing Tomb Raider 2, and then he went off on a tangent about how in Tomb Raider 3 there should be a story where Lara Croft gets breast cancer.
Jesus.
Yeah. So other classics include he's reviewing a racing game and he complains that it's not imaginative enough because it's too close to actual racing, and that he would rather play a game where you had to drive to the hospital while your wife was pregnant and try to get there on time without being pulled over by the cops.
Oh my god. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
His complaint that Final Fantasy VIII had dated graphics, which is bizarre because he was reviewing it at the time and they were like cutting edge.
Yeah.
Also in his Final Fantasy VIII review, he opened by saying that because Titanic was a very successful movie, Final Fantasy VIII should have the characters die at the end, because then it will be tragic like Titanic.
Who wrote his scripts?
I don't know. He also had a parody of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire called Who Wants to See My Derriere, in which he would ask people trivia questions, and if they won, they would go backstage and he would pull his pants down. So, as I'm describing it now, people would think, how is this real? It's probably made up. So thankfully, a company called Navgator, which stands for like National Academy of Testers and Reviewers or something, which is like a weird sort of awards show. They somehow acquired the like archive of every episode of Flights of Fantasy, and they just cut his reviews out and put them on their channel and collectively called it Gaming in the Clinton Years. And they added a little thing at the beginning of the bonus stage from one of the Battletoads games with a picture of Bill Clinton sort of slowly fading in over it. And that kind of became its own thing for a while. It was quite popular about 10 years ago, because it's like, what the fuck am I watching? Also, as like a tangent, there was a YouTube channel that actually had complete episodes of Flights of Fantasy on it.
Uh-huh.
So you got to see the whole thing, including like Who Wants to See My Derriere, and like him reviewing movies. He was weirdly obsessed with a show called Murder One, which was like a legal drama thing that no one remembers.
Okay.
But for some reason, he just kept bringing up Murder One. That was taken down because there was so much footage of games in it that like it got content ID'd and removed.
Aww.
But an enterprising young man, possibly named Richard, managed to save that And I do have like the complete episodes on Google Drive in like a RAR file if anyone wants to message me and get the link and experience Flights of Fantasy.
Oh my god.
It's odd because it feels like it was made by people now who then went back in time. Like, no, it feels like people from now went back in time to make a show specifically so that we could make fun of it today. Because there's a whole string of episodes about how the Virtual Boy is going to be the most successful console ever.
Oh my god.
And for anyone who doesn't know about the Virtual Boy, it was Nintendo's like first like massive fucking disaster that like I think it had a library of 13 games and just sank without trace. But you get to see George Wood announcing to everyone that like the winner of this console generation, it's Virtual Boy. And him sort of like maladroitly fumbling with the Virtual Boy controls trying to wear it. So our show is going to be slightly worse than that.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks for that, Richard. I'm gonna assume everybody knows who Yeltsin is.
Well, didn't someone not know who Yeltsin was last time we were talking about this?
Oh, that's true.
We picked Yeltsin because Yeltsin was in charge of Russia, like, around the same time as Clinton.
Yeah. I think there was, I don't know if I'm imagining this, but I think this may have happened, where Clinton visited Russia, and then, so Yeltsin and Clinton were like, I don't know, delivering a speech together. And then,
I've seen it.
So I think in that Yeltsin accidentally called Bill Clinton Blin Clinton, which means like pancake Clinton. But honestly, I don't know if this was real or if this was some like a skit on a parody show. But
It's like Ich bin ein Berliner.
What's that?
Because Kennedy went to Berlin and said like Ich bin ein Berliner. Meaning, like, I am one of you, but it came across as, like, I am a sausage. Apparently, I don't know German.
That's awesome.
So America's had a sausage president and a pancake president.
Yeah. And, like, if you Google Yeltsin, you'll find a lot of videos of him just being drunk and dancing.
Yeah, that was the dominant sort of Yeltsin discourse over here, was, like, historically, it's important to understand that, like, if you're younger than us, there was, like, a very tense standoff between the US and the USSR, and it wasn't clear that the US was going to come out on top until the late 80s, early 90s, when the USSR started to dissolve.
Yeah.
So there was a real, like, attempt to play up Yeltsin as, like, look at this, like, drunken idiot. As a way of saying, like, look, Russia's not a threat anymore, because instead of being run by, like, this, like, secret communist warlord, like, whoever they'd invented, it's, like, weird sort of image they'd created of the USSR, instead of this, like, threatening thing that's going to destroy everything, it's just this, like, Rodney Dangerfield character.
I can't say they were far off.
And I can't do the Australian one by calling it gaming in the Howard years, because John Howard was Prime Minister for so long that he encompasses, like, multiple console generations. For reference, like, we just had another Prime Minister get thrown out and replaced, so, like, my life has been, like, it was the same Prime Minister from when I was 12 to when I was 23. And in the 10 years since then, not a single Prime Minister has completed their term without being thrown out of office.
You guys are hardcore.
Yeah. So if we did it now, it would have to be called Gaming in the Rudd Gillard, Rudd Abbott, Turnbull Morrison years.
Maybe that's going to be our next podcast.
Well, Morrison's already unpopular. So we'll probably have to append, like, shorten to that. But anyway.
Okay. And like today's episode, we want to follow the same format as we did for the Snack Covenant.
Yeah, format.
Shut up.
There's a real format to these things. They're really well thought out.
Comparatively to our previous stuff, they are.
That's true, and it's sad.
And so that's why we want to have an episode 0 to talk about like our first consoles and games from that era.
Okay.
So Richie, you start.
My first console was the Nintendo Game Boy, which I got when I was 6 because my family were going on our one and only international holiday, which was to New Zealand, which barely counts. It's like if you're American and you go to Canada. New Zealand is Australia's Canada, basically. And it was going to be a long flight, and then we were going to drive around New Zealand, so my parents got me and my brother a Game Boy to play in the plane and in the car. My first game, fittingly, was Tetris, which was sold as Tetris the Soviet Mind Game, but my version wasn't called that, it was just called Tetris.
Cool.
So, like, I imagine most people are familiar with the Game Boy and Tetris, but
I think so.
they're probably not familiar with the Dendy.
Yeah.
So I think this is what they came for. You should explain the Dendy to people.
Well, when I moved to Canada, I was very surprised that Dendy doesn't exist here. And basically, Dendy is a Taiwanese like Nintendo clone that was produced in Russia because Nintendo wasn't interested in the Russian market, so we didn't have it. And like you guys got a Nintendo in early 80s, right?
Yeah, it was would have been it depends on where you are, because like all right, we're already going on a tangent. Another thing people who are younger than us need to understand is like the delay between a game coming out in one region and another region used to be significantly longer.
Yeah.
So like I was talking to someone a while ago who was saying like, oh, it really sucks because like Tekken 7 or whatever the current Tekken is, like, they got that like a week early in Asia. It sucks. And I'm just going to look up the release dates of Super Mario Bros. 3 to put this in perspective. You can edit out the silence, hopefully.
Or will I?
Okay, so for perspective, right? Super Mario Bros. 3, Japanese release date October 23rd, 1988. Release date in Australia, August 29th, 1991. So it took 2.5 years to come out here. And like the NES itself took a really long time to come out here too. And like,
well, here on the Wikipedia it says that in 1983, it came out in Japan. Nintendo came out in Japan, and then in 1985, a cosmetically reworked version of the system known outside Japan as Nintendo Entertainment System launched in North America.
Yeah.
So you guys got it like 2 years later. But our version of Nintendo, which is Dendy, we didn't get until the early 90s.
Yeah, it was like 91 or 92 that you got the Dendy. Yeah.
So it's like a decade or so after the original Nintendo or Famicom came out.
Yeah. And it was like, so people know the Dendy was just like, it was an identical copy of the Nintendo hardware. It was just called the Dendy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, yeah, basically, like, I guess people who were really into games or gaming, or maybe older people, may have known that a Nintendo existed. But for us, like, as kids, we had a Dendy and we didn't know anything else was out there, right?
Yep.
And even like the Super Nintendo, like we wouldn't know that it's called Super Nintendo because a Nintendo existed before. It's just kind of like Dendy turned into a Super Nintendo type deal. And the cool thing about the Dendy is its mascot. Can you tell us about it, Richie?
Well, the mascot of the Dendy is an adorable, well, actually vaguely creepy looking elephant.
Yes.
He's a cartoon elephant, like the sort of a humanoid elephant, who's doing a little peace sign. But there's something about his face. He looks untrustworthy. Like if I lived in a world of humanoid animals and I like saw this little elephant kid hanging around, I'd watch him. Like if he were the child of someone I knew and I had to babysit him, I would like keep him away from most of my stuff.
Yeah, but I wonder if he's really doing the peace sign. It looks like he's doing like the thumb. You know what I mean? It's not bent.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's even doing a peace sign. I don't know what he's doing.
Is that like the Dendy sign?
Oh, maybe. I have no idea.
He's also one of those rare cartoon characters who's got 5 fingers, which sort of just plays up the uncanny valley aspect of this. What it looks like is it looks like someone has just traced like a child and then given them a trunk and giant ears.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not like Baba. It's not like a cuddly elephant. It's like vaguely creepy.
Yeah. Maybe he's like, I'm coming for you. You got 3 seconds to live. So that's what the fingers represent.
Oh, God, it does.
Yeah. Oh, man. So our logo, which now has become clear, is I asked Ike to draw us as chibis, but basically in the image
As
of this
the Dendy.
elephant. Yeah. Well, in terms of clothes, not the creepy ears and the trunk. But I really like what he drew because I'm eating a sandwich and you're reading a book and giving me a look, which represents perfectly our relationship.
It does, actually.
As well as our personalities.
Yes.
Well, you know, speaking of the elephant, it was designed like I didn't know this until I read the Wikipedia page, like preparing for this. It was designed by a Russian animator named Ivan Maximov.
Yep.
And apparently he was also involved somehow in a Russian show called The New Reality. And that show is basically, I think I sent you a link. It's like a show about video games where a host like talks about a console, or I guess the Nintendo console.
Yeah.
And the video game. Yeah, and he has like a little 5-minute walkthrough with commentary and a review on the game.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that. It was pretty neat. Sometimes they'd like read letters from the audience. Sometimes they'd have like experts from the field, which were like teenagers telling the audience how to play a game better. It's like a low production YouTube video of today.
Yeah, much like Flights of Fantasy.
Yeah.
Except this wasn't on public access. And I don't know if the host has anything on George Wood. They brought George Wood back briefly. In like when gaming in the Clinton years became this like meme, they managed to track down George Wood and get him to record new stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
So he reviews the Wii, and he's holding the thing and saying, "I'm George Wood. If you're watching this in the morning, that makes me your morning Wood, with an overactive Wii."
Oh my god.
And like, I know it wasn't written by the same people, but that was the tone of Flights of Fantasy.
Oh my god, that's amazing. We'll need to make a podcast about these.
Yeah.
So another thing that's interesting is that until reading this article, I didn't know that the Famicom and like Nintendo in North America came out almost a decade before I got it.
Yeah.
I kind of assumed it was all around the same era, but no.
Well, this is what we were getting at, that like at that point in time, the notion that like there's 3 consoles and then they all come out at the same time and everyone gets the same stuff that's recent.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you speak to people from Europe or from South America, like they will tell you that like the NES wasn't a thing there, but the Master System was. Like it was the same here because like the launch of the NES was not like pushed very heavily in certain regions, but so Sega were able to come in and release the Master System, and the Master System was like the dominant console at that time. So like I see these YouTube videos from American like channels saying like, oh, the Master System, that's like this weird forgotten thing, and like it's not. It was like the most like everyone I knew had a Master System. I didn't know anyone with an NES when I was a kid. And like there are places like Brazil, I think, still manufactures Master Systems now. It still makes like hardware clones to play games on because it's still a popular thing there.
Huh. I remember there was a console dubbed the Super Dandy. I wonder if it was the Master System. I can't remember, or maybe that's what people called Super Nintendo by like inertia.
Yeah.
The Super Dandy. Yeah, I'm trying to look it up on YouTube, but can't find anything. But I remember we called something a Super Dandy when it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And my Dandy, I remember it came with a cartridge.
Yeah.
And it had like 100 games on it or something.
Yeah.
It was just a few games repeated over and over.
Yeah, that's how those cartridges work.
And recently, my boyfriend informed me that that may have been illegal.
It may have.
But I didn't know. I thought that was normal.
No, that is almost certainly pirated. There's
Okay.
like one. No, but anyway, yeah, that was almost certainly. Yeah, that would have been pirated.
But I feel like everybody had one of those. So,
Yeah.
it's like, I wonder if it came with the actual game, with the
It
actual
probably did.
console.
Yeah, I'm looking now, and there's like a list of games that came out, and it's like, yep, the Somari was one of the games released for the Dendy, which was Somari is kind of an infamous bootleg NES game that attempts to make Sonic the Hedgehog work on the NES, but with a Mario sprite, which is basically just like, I think it's just Sonic with Mario's head. It looks really weird, and he runs like Sonic.
Well, also his jumpsuit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a Sonic Mario mod.
Yeah, I've
Basically.
played it, and it like basically doesn't work. Like, there's just a point where you can't progress anymore because it's so badly made.
Oh no, that's too bad.
And there's several games like that just reuse that engine with a different character. Like, there's one called Jurassic Boy. That's basically, it's just Somari, but you're playing as a dinosaur.
That's amazing.
Yeah, if anyone's familiar with Action 52, which is this like infamously awful NES game that was meant to be 52 games in one, Action 52 was the result of a guy seeing one of these illegal like 100 games in one cartridge things and thinking, oh, what if I did this legally?
Mm-hmm.
So he got a bunch of college students, and I think he didn't pay them very much, to make 52 really, really basic games on one cartridge. And it's every bit as broken and unplayable as it sounds.
You know what's engraved in my mind from the Dandy years?
The Dendy jingle.
Did you just say the Dandy jingle?
Yeah.
How did you know?
Dandy, 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 dandy. Because I watched a bunch of commercials.
Dandy, dandy, мы все любим dandy. В dandy играют все. Yeah, it was like, I don't know if they played it on TV a lot or if we were just so obsessed with it, but it's like, I remembered it forever. It's basically just like, dandy, dandy, we all love dandy. Dandy, everybody plays. And all the commercials are like super 90s and they're very Russian at the same time. So I don't remember exactly what my first Dandy game was, but it would have been something from that cartridge. So it would have either been like Tetris or that Mario game where there are like platforms and like creatures coming out of pipes.
Yeah, that's the original Mario Brothers. Like the arcade one, yeah.
Yeah, or tanks. My dad used to be obsessed with the tanks game.
I've heard your dad talk about the tanks.
Yeah. I'll put it at the end of the podcast. My parents talking about their Dandy experience. Oh, and tanks were really cool because you could build your own levels.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We would cheat though. We would make like a level, like a fence, so that the enemy tanks would have to go into one direction, and then we would just stand there and blast them.
Yeah.
And this way we'd get all the power-ups for the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant strategizing even back then, bro.
That is a brilliant strategy. Yeah. You were always a genius.
So, Richard, how do you know so much about Dandy? Because when we were randomly talking, I think you're the one that brought it up, and I was like, how did you know?
Yeah, I just have an interest in like bootleg games, and a lot of bootleg shit came out for the Dendy. And it just turns out that I think you exclusively played bootlegs from the sound of it.
I may have, I don't know. Well, we had like honestly, for the Dandy, I feel like I only remember that cartridge. But I'm guessing we had other games too. I'm sure some of it weren't complete bootlegs.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
Oh, and I remember, and it's something that I streamed, that game that I used to play a lot, the one in the Disneyland.
Oh, Adventures in the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah. And I actually finished it as a kid, but as an adult, I found it much more difficult.
Was it harder than Dark Souls?
Oh, yeah. At least I almost finished Dark Souls. I wasn't even close there. I guess if I think about it harder, I'll remember more games, or if I Google them, I'll be like, oh, I played this and that.
Well, from what I gather, it was mostly like bootleg shit where they would get like a Mario game and just replace Mario with a different graphic. Or the other approach is to get an existing game and replace the character with Mario.
Yeah.
And I like, this is something again that's like going to be lost if this crackdown on emulation continues. Because a lot of these things, like some like Taiwanese garage bootlegger company will make some weird thing that's like they'll get an existing like one, for example, is there's an NES game called Wampum where you play as a guy with a staff. And it plays nothing like Mario, but they'll get that and they'll just replace the character's head with Mario's head. And they'll call it like some weird title like Super Mario Fantastic Land 9 and release that. In like like markets and things where there's no like regulation and no one really gives a shit.
Yeah.
And like those things, like they may have a run of like, you know, handfuls of these things released, and if they're not like backed up through emulation, they're just gone.
Yeah.
And like you can say, okay, well, why? Who fucking cares? This is like garbage. This is just like. But it's still like, it's a thing. It needs to be preserved by someone.
And you're actually a preserver of old discarded stuff.
Yeah, but not video games, sadly.
Well, maybe you should start.
Oh, actually, I kind of am, because I have a lot of old shareware CDs from the 90s that miraculously still work. Oh my god, I put one in the other day and I was looking at the files and it's so surreal because I'm on like Windows 10 in 2018 looking through this directory and they're all like last modified 1995.
Oh, damn.
I've not seen that number on a last modified thing for fucking like 20 years at this point.
It's like a time capsule.
It is. It's a time capsule of the shareware CDs that would have like Doom and Commander Keen, and then 198 other pieces of shit that you've never heard of and will never play again.
Oh, man. Or we should play them so we can talk about them in upcoming podcasts.
Are you sure? Because you're going to have to get like DOSBox and get DOSBox to emulate Windows 3.1.
Gonna get what?
Exactly. In order to make old shareware CDs work, you have to run a virtual version of DOS and then install Windows 3.1 on the virtual version of DOS and then run Windows 3.1 from a virtual version of DOS that is itself being run by Windows 10.
Well, you know, my boyfriend got a little thing called a Pi. Some sort
Raspberry
of a Pi.
Pi.
Yeah. And so I'm sure he can make stuff on it.
Yeah, but does the Raspberry Pi run DOS? Or does it just run console emulators?
I'm sure it does.
Your tone is not promising. Do you have anything else to say about the Dendy?
I don't know. It was pretty cool.
Mm.
It was a pretty big deal. I guess it must have been a pretty big deal in North America or Australia when the Nintendo came out, right?
No, but this is what I was saying before, that like like I was talking about like the release dates of things. So like the Nintendo Entertainment System took like 2 or 3 or 4 years, I think, in between it coming out in the US and coming out here. Like they just didn't bother releasing it properly. So by the time it kind of like limped out, it was almost at the end of its lifespan. So this Super Nintendo was like just around the corner, and everyone already had the Sega Master System. And you can see there that I called it the Sega Master System because it was really huge here, and all the ads called it Sega instead of Sega. And like these were official. It's bizarre to me because the game started with a clip of someone going Sega, but for some reason everyone called it Sega. The ads called it Sega. The shows, like we had a show called The Zone, that was a Sega sponsored show that like it did review other consoles, but it was obviously heavily biased toward Sega stuff, and they all called it Sega. And if you look up on YouTube like Australian Sega ads from the 90s, they're all saying Sega, 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 and it took me until I was like 25 to stop saying Sega consistently.
Oh man.
Yeah. So like that was the Master System was massive here, and everyone I knew had a Master System, and literally no one I knew had an NES. The only time I ever played the NES was when I rented it, because there was a rental place here that would rent out consoles. That was my only time playing it. And like, yeah, and then that came out, and then the SNES was a lot more successful, but a lot of people had the Mega Drive / Genesis as well. So like, yeah, it was just very, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like,
So the second console I had was the Super Nintendo, and that was also in Russia.
Yeah.
And the first game I played in it was Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I think we bought it together. Like, we went to the store and we bought the Super Nintendo and the Donkey Kong cartridge.
Yeah.
And it's still one of my favorite games. I was so amazed about everything by it. I was like, oh my God, the music is amazing. The background is amazing. And like the movements are so smooth. And I really loved little things about it as well. Like, for example, you know, when like Mario turned in games, it's like he flips from one side to the next.
Yeah.
But with Donkey Kong, you could actually like see him move. Like, for some reason, I found that like super impressive. Or like when you stand on the edge, you know, his eyes pop out because he's scared of heights.
Yeah.
Like little things like that. Or like you can play as Diddy or as Donkey Kong. And even though I don't like leveling or any of that shit, I really appreciated how they had different strengths. So I was really into that too, but I mostly played as Diddy all the time. There's
another gaming in the Clinton years infamous thing involving Donkey Kong.
Oh no, what is it?
Where he reviews Donkey Kong Country, and then at the end he says, Donkey Kong Country is truly perfect. If you do not like this game, you are stupid. Yes, we know it's insulting, but it's also true.
Oh my God, I love this. It is, though. It's such a perfect game.
Yeah, there was like, it was really popular at the time, and then around like the 2000s, when internet game discourse kind of became a thing, it was cool to hate it.
Really?
It was cool to hate it. It was cool to hate it, and then there's apparently a quote from Shigeru Miyamoto where he says, like, Donkey Kong Country shows people will put up with mediocre gameplay if the graphics are good. But that's, to my knowledge, never actually been sourced, and I don't think he actually said it.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. And now people like it again.
Oh, yeah. Well, I liked Donkey Kong Country too.
Yeah.
I appreciated that there was Diddy Kong, who also had like a different moveset and a different thing going on. And I thought the levels were harder. But,
yeah,
you know, I liked it anyway. I liked the story that Donkey Kong got kidnapped and we gotta save him. But then Donkey Kong 3, I hated everything about it. I don't like this baby Kong dude. I don't like the fact that, like, I still remember this, and I don't know if I'm right, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they weren't afraid of heights. You never played it? I'm pretty sure in Donkey Kong 2, they still kept the thing where if you stand on the edge, they like do a little animation.
yeah,
But
they
in 3,
animate, yeah.
I'm sure it was gone. I'm sure it made me very mad. I just didn't like the gameplay. I didn't like the characters. I was like, what is this? I didn't like anything about it. And I was very disappointed.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm.
But then Donkey Kong on the Wii, like once I started getting back into gaming when I was an adult.
So this is Donkey Kong Country Returns. Like, it's the new one. It's not like you weren't playing the original on the Virtual Console.
What?
Just go.
No, the 3 I'm talking about, it's like the on Super Nintendo. There's Donkey Kong 1, Donkey Kong 2, Donkey Kong 3. Yeah, that's on Super Nintendo.
Yeah. But then on the Wii, they also released those again.
Oh, no,
as like
I
a
didn't.
download thing. Okay.
Oh, I didn't play those. No, I play like when they released it on the Wii, like when they, I guess, rebooted it on the Wii.
Yeah.
That's what I played. And it was so funny because I haven't played games in years because I had to like go to college and get a job and do adult stuff, right? So then the last thing I played was like on PS1 or something, like, or maybe Xbox 360 or like back in those days, you know? And so trying to play Donkey Kong was so confusing because I was not used to like having like bright colors and so many things going on, and there's background moving, and I was so like, I'm like, I don't understand anything that's going on. That's too much information, too much stimuli. Oh my God. But anyway, I loved it too at the end once I got used to it. But I remember being just like so overwhelmed playing again for the first time.
Yeah, I was similar in that I didn't really play anything between like 2000 and maybe like 2013.
Yeah.
Because I was just doing other stuff and didn't have any money.
Yeah, story of our lives.
Yeah. So I have like a sort of a photographic memory for like weird shit that came out in the 90s because nothing came along to overwrite that.
Yeah.
So when people were like, I found this really, like, have you seen this Deep Fear game? It's a load of shit. And I'm like, I remember the magazine articles about Deep Fear. I remember the magazine preview of Rihanna Rouge. Like, it's still in my head. I can talk about importing games in Australia.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So this is something that I thought everyone knew, but it turns out some people don't. So I'm going to lay it out. This is probably going to be quite boring, but whatever. There's like different regions, as in like things being region locked, but also they use completely different signals in different parts of the world to actually get information from a console to a TV. So North America and Japan use what's called NTSC, and Europe, Australia, and basically everywhere else use what's called PAL. And the difference is basically that NTSC looks worse but has a faster refresh rate. PAL has a higher resolution and better color, but it updates slower. Mm-hmm. So PAL is like better at sort of everything except video games because it runs about 10% slower.
Mm-hmm.
So like 60 FPS games that were 60 FPS when they were made in Japan, by the time they got to a PAL region, they became 50 FPS. And depending on how that was handled, some of it was fine. Other times the game would literally just run in slow motion.
Aww.
And the other issue, so like there was that, and there's also that like it had to be converted from NTSC to PAL to actually run. You couldn't just put an NTSC cartridge in a PAL machine. It just wouldn't work. So what happened was like a lot of games just didn't come out in PAL regions. Even if they got an English localization in North America, they wouldn't come out here.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that you played them was you had to get this NTSC to PAL converter. And it would slot into the console, and then you put the cartridge on top of that. So the cartridge was kind of like balanced on top of this thing that would convert the NTSC cartridge signal to like a PAL compatible thing. So that was how I played a lot of RPGs at the time, because they wouldn't come out they just wouldn't get PAL releases. Or they would, but it would take like literally like Breath of Fire 2, for example, that's an SNES RPG. We did not get Breath of Fire 2 until 1997, and it's an SNES game. So this was like years into the release of the N64. Wow. We finally got this SNES game. So, yeah. So, like, the big ones were Final Fantasy VI, which was called 3 at the time, and Chrono Trigger. And they did not get PAL releases at all. The only way to play them was to use this converter thing. And the game rental place that I mentioned earlier, they would rent out the converter. So they would import American games you could play with the converter. They cost more to rent. And I was renting Final Fantasy VI all the time, which, like, for reference, anyone who doesn't know, it is, like, fucking vast, like, 40-something hour game. And I played it so much that I got my parents to just, like, hey, can you just buy this for me from an importer? And it was like my birthday present for that year. And it like you had to pay to get the cartridge, pay to import it, and then pay for the converter. So it was like as expensive as like 2 or 3 games together.
Oh, damn.
To play this thing. And like because of the converter, the conversion was never perfect. So it was full of glitches. So like the map that you walked around on would sometimes just disappear. You would get, like, the menus, everything on the menu would be black except the item description. So you had to, like, just look at the description and navigate from that because you couldn't see what anything was pointing at. And it like, the music wouldn't work sometimes. You would just, like, randomly crash. And I eventually finished the game, but, like, the final sort of, like, I don't know what you'd call it, like, at the end of this whole odyssey of trying to finish this game that was like constantly breaking on me was that the ending sequence crashes. So you can't ever actually see the ending.
Oh, that sucks.
The ending gets halfway through and then just this soft locks to a black screen and you have to reset the console. Yeah, so this is what we had to deal with at the time. And so when people are like, it's out on PC a week early, I'm like, yeah, well, perspective.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were a lot of very bad NTSC to PAL conversions that, like, we didn't notice at the time because we couldn't watch it side by side with another console and see, hang on, one's running much, much better than the other. And it's odd, like, trying to get across to people that Sonic the Hedgehog was a big game in PAL regions. Because if you look at NTSC Sonic and PAL Sonic next to each other, PAL Sonic looks like it looks seasick. It's like lurching everywhere and the music keeps kind of randomly slowing down and randomly speeding up again because the NTSC conversion wasn't quite, like, up to scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, like, there are like, I used to do a lot of Super Metroid sequence breaking back in the day. And back in the day meaning, like, 2008. And, like, there are glitches and, like, speedrun tricks you can pull off only in the PAL version because it's running slower. So you have, like, slightly more time to do things. Because the game it's kind of running slightly in slow motion, so you've got a little more room to do inputs. So there's certain things that, like, you cannot perform this on an NTSC console because it has to be, like, you have to push buttons basically faster than a human can actually push buttons. The only way to do it is by, like, programming a macro to do it for you. But because the PAL version's running slower, you've got a little bit more time, so it is possible to pull it off live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything else we can say?
What is the point of this? Like, I don't even know what the topic is.
I don't know. It's just episode 0. Just general stuff.
Just general?
Yeah, just general.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of, like, weird shit that I played. Because I had a Game Boy, and, like, the Game Boy has one of the oddest libraries of any system.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Jeremy Parish, who people might know from, like, Retronauts and previously of 1UP, like, he has an ongoing series on his channel just called Game Boy Works, where he goes through all of these, like, he's going through the whole Game Boy library and just talking about all these just strange oddities that were released for that system.
Mm-hmm. Like what?
Like Fish Dude.
What is Fish Dude?
You play as a little fish, and you swim around eating other fish, and you get bigger, but the bigger you get, the more fish that want to eat you. It's Fish Dude.
Do you ever end up at the coast of a fishing hamlet?
Well, you don't ever not do it.
I see.
Yeah. The most disappointing Game Boy game I played was a game called Trax, Trax.
Yeah.
Which was made by the people who made Kirby. And it had this really, like, they had put a whole lot of effort into Trax. Like, it's a game about, it's like tanks. You play as a little tank.
Uh-huh.
And you're a cute little, like, kind of spherical tank. You kind of look like something from Dragon Ball. And you just, like, or more like Dr. Slump. And you sort of, like, just drive around shooting other tanks. And it has, like, physics and stuff. Like, if you bash into things, they'll move out of the way. It's got, like, animated cutscenes, and it has, like, a fully animated introduction with, like, little sprites of people that you never see outside the introduction and everything. And the problem is, like I would rent Game Boy games because my grandparents used to live, like, 4 hours away. So we would rent games to play in the car. And I remember renting Trax at the age of, like, 10. And then it was finished within about 20 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And there's nothing else after that. It just, like, it's so incredibly easy. That, like, even as a child, I just sort of finished it and that was it. And there's no extra mode to it. Because, like, Kirby's Dream Land, right?
Yeah.
I assume most people know what that is. That was, like, another very, very easy game by the same developers. But, like, Kirby's Dream Land, that had New Game Plus in it. Like, after you beat Kirby's Dream Land, you then had the option to play through it again, and it added new enemies to the levels, and it's actually pretty hard.
Uh-huh.
Like, New Game Plus Kirby's Dream Land is legitimately, like, a difficult game, because they add a ton of extra enemies to it, and they're in very calculated places that just sort of designed to make the game, like, really, really difficult in a way that it's not normally. But this did not have that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the point of any of that was.
It's okay, it's general.
Well, I think we should have, like, topics in the future.
Yeah, we will. This was just episode 0. It's whatever. It's to keep the podcast consistent. It doesn't have to be anything.
It's to keep the podcasts consistent. It doesn't have to be anything. So we're keeping it consistently nothing.
Yeah. No, episode 0 is consistently nothing. It's just like to introduce what's going to happen. And
we have an episode 1 already.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is being recorded afterwards.
Yeah, but that's because episode 1 had a topic. So episode 2 is going to have a topic, and 3 is going to have a topic, and then we're going to have specific topics for each one. But episode 0 has to be just general.
Okay.
Yeah.
You still haven't played Pathologic.
No, I haven't.
The most Russian game ever made.
I wonder if I can play it on my week off. Maybe I will.
Yeah.
Was it made in the Yeltsin years?
I think it was slightly after.
Okay. Oh.
2005.
Yeah, a bit after.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that's it then.
We learned a lot, I guess.
Yeah, we did.
I think the bit at the end about the Game Boy is pointless. Because I'm just like, Trax is easy and Kirby's also easy, but has New Game Plus.
Wait, so is Dark Souls the Kirby of PlayStation?
Aldrich is a bit like Kirby.
Yeah, it's true.
Because Kirby gets his powers from eating people.
And so does Aldrich. Is Dark Souls 3 a Kirby prequel?
Well, Kirby does live in Dreamland, which is in Bloodborne.
So is Kirby the glue that can connect all the Bloodborne and Dark Souls worlds together?
Kirby does have like a weird cosmic evil in it later on.
Oh, yeah?
Because it started off like the early games are like, oh, Kirby, he lives in Dreamland, and a naughty duck/penguin, I don't think we ever figured it out, has stolen all the food, and you've got to get it back, and he's just like throwing apples at a tree and like...
Yeah.
But then like you play the later ones and it starts out like that, but then the final boss will be like a sealed evil from the dawn of time that's like from a dimension of darkness.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of like a cartoon. Okay, it's a cartoon about a boy and he falls asleep and then he's transported into like a dreamland. And killing me. Is it
Little Nemo?
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen that?
Yeah. It's pretty famous.
Is it? Okay, I used to watch that a lot.
That has an NES game, Little Nemo.
I wonder if I played it. Wait, let me look it up. Yeah, I remember I was creeped out as a kid because at some point Little Nemo goes into the room where he's not supposed to go, right? And opens a door and releases evil. That creeped me out every single time. Little Nemo the Dream Master. Oh, is he wearing a frog costume?
Well, this is the thing about that game, because it says like, feed animals candy and they'll give you a ride. Because what he does is you attack by throwing candy and that like pacifies animals.
Okay.
But give you a ride means that he appears to hollow them out and wear them as a suit.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like.
It's a bit disturbing.
It's very disturbing.
So it's like somewhere between a fursuit and vor. I can't tell.
It's like Little Nemo is a psychopath.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Are those flying skeleton flies?
I haven't played it for a long time.
Oh, I feel like that's a game we should cover.
Okay.
It's pretty trippy looking. Do you think we could cover every single game created for the Nintendo system / Dandy?
No.
How many games is that?
Well, Jeremy Parish can't do it, and he knows what he's doing. So I don't know what hope we have.
Who's Jeremy Parish?
He's a games journalist guy from... he used to run a website called Toasty Frog that was one of the... Like, I remember reading it in high school. It was like one of the first sort of like personal game analysis sites I knew of. He would just like reminisce about games he played and write funny articles about them. And then he does a podcast now called Retronauts, where he talks about old games. It's like a good version of this.
Oh, okay. So people should check it out.
It's important to support smaller things like Retronauts on this episode 0 of a piece of shit no one listens to.
Yeah, exactly. We can't hoard all the views.
The thing is, like, most of my, like, 2000s internet clique were formed around, like, the sort of same peer group that he was in. So I know various people who are like, oh god, I wish I had, like, if I'd just gotten in his face a bit more, like, I could be on Retronauts instead of the job I have now.
Aww.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have him on one day.
No, he's well, okay, if we're ever very, very famous, we can have him on, but I don't think he cares. Well, you have this habit of just, like, messaging people out of nowhere and them agreeing to do things for you. And how, like, you just got me to do things for you. And now I'm, like, the co-host.
Yeah, there we go. I wish I was that good at things in real life. Maybe I'd be somewhere right now.
Yeah, I feel similarly.
Yeah, maybe I'd have some
Yeah.
actual success or something to be proud of.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a good note to end on.
Yeah, so that's episode 0 of Gaming in the Yeltsin years.
Yeah, we've already recorded episode 1.
Yeah, okay, well, I guess
It's a bit better.
I think it's a lot better. I guess we can talk about it because we have a special guest on.
I think you should release them both at the same time.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because otherwise people will listen to this and think I'm not listening to episode 1. But if you release this and episode 1, I think people will maybe check out episode 1.
Or maybe they'll skip this and go straight to 1.
That's my hope.
Which would be ideal.
Because 1 has a topic.
Yeah, it's true. And 1 has a nick.
It does have a nick.
Yeah, he's super knowledgeable about stuff and very well spoken and super funny.
Yep.
Yeah. He's also our resident lawyer.
Yes. Who's informed me that I have no way of escaping from this situation.
Yeah, we asked him at some point, I don't know if it was on the podcast or in real life, can Rich escape from this contract? And the answer was nah.
No. Well, I'm glad that we've chosen to start this retro gaming podcast just as Nintendo start cracking down on ROM sites, making it significantly harder to get these games. So it's good timing.
I think that's how we do things.
Much the same way as you started a Souls series, after the release of the final game in the trilogy.
Yeah, we don't take the easy way out,
Yeah. We could be doing, I don't know. We're at least in a slightly better position than people who started, weekly Star Wars podcasts. And are now faced with a situation where no one really seems to care about or like Star Wars anymore. But they have to somehow fill in an hour a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that on YouTube.
Yeah. So I guess that's it.
What prequel characters could return in episode 9? That's an hour. Who's your favorite Star Wars prequels character who should return for episode 9?
Me?
Yeah.
Jar Jar Binks?
Well, he is canonically still alive.
Yeah, I think they should have a whole trilogy just about him.
The prequels kind of was that.
Did you read that theory where he's actually the mastermind behind everything?
I read the title of the theory and decided it wasn't worth reading the rest of it.
Oh my god, you should read the rest of it. It kind of makes sense, Richie. And I hope they go with that idea and where it turns out that he's actually the mastermind behind everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's playing the long game.
Yes, exactly. It would add some much needed excitement to the series,
I have a life-size plastic Jar Jar Binks head on my mantelpiece.
You hang on to that.
I will. Yeah, it was at a charity store for $2. I think it's a money box. I don't know. I just got it, and it just stares at me all day, judging me.
Yeah, and when Jar Jar Binks is judging you, you need to evaluate your life choices.
I'm stared at by Jar Jar Binks, a plastic penguin, I can talk about Sega World. That's a game topic. Okay, so one of the things on my mantelpiece is a plush pig that I won at Sega World.
Mm-hmm.
So Sega World was a Sega-themed amusement park that I sort of didn't appreciate at the time how odd it was. It was in Sydney. And I don't live anywhere near Sydney, but my family went there a couple of times on holidays. So I went to Sega World, and it was like a sort of museum of the history of Sega combined with a video arcade, combined with people in Sonic the Hedgehog costumes, kind of like Disneyland mascots.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to hang around there, and yeah, I have a pig that I won there on one of those claw grabbing games.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, I wasn't a huge, like, this was when I was a teenager and I sort of, like, wasn't playing Sega anymore. But, like, apparently there were only 2 in the world. There was, like, one here and one in Japan.
Uh-huh.
And it was like this whole, like, you could go on, like, rides that would, it was like a train thing that took you through this museum that explained the history of Sega to you. And they would have, like put on shows where, like, a guy dressed as Sonic and a guy dressed as Eggman would talk to each other and stuff. And they'd act out little plays and things. And yeah, and then it just like when Sega, when they pulled out of the console market and their financials weren't looking too good, they just, like, it was pulled down. But yeah, it's so weird to explain to people that there used to be, like, a gigantic sort of amusement park in Sydney that was just, like, Sonic everywhere.
That sounds awesome.
Because,
though.
like, the thing is, like, most Sonic is weird because, like, there was a period where he was, like, the most popular thing in the world. And then that, like, died off, and now he's come back as, like, a mixture of people who appreciate it ironically and people who were very, very small when, or possibly not born when he was that, and their appreciation is completely, like, genuine.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, it was huge, and, like, there was I still have, I have a brochure from it, actually, because my parents are moving house at the moment. I was helping them, and we were going through, like, just piles of old stuff, and I found there's, like, a perfectly preserved Sega World Sydney brochure.
Oh.
But, like, I'm holding it now. It has, like, a map of the park and everything. And yeah, like, it's structured around, like, the past, present, and future of Sega. So you go into the present, and then if you go into the past, they'll, like, tell you about the history of Sega. And if you go into the future, they, like, all these weird, like VR displays and things.
Oh. That's really cool.
And they have birthday party. Oh, there's a food court. Doesn't say what they served there. Sydney was also where they filmed the first Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie.
Really?
Yeah, doubling for Angel Grove. And Sydney used to have a monorail. It was dismantled in, I think, like 2015 or 2014, but it had a monorail that went around the city, and, like, the monorail is a key plot point in the Power Rangers movie. So it's really weird to watch it because they're, like, trying to sell this is set in America, and we're all just like, but that's the Sydney monorail that, like, that they make a huge deal about. Come to Sydney and see the monorail.
Lol. I remember that movie. I really liked it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, by I remember, I mean, I don't remember it at all, but I remember really liking it as a kid.
Yeah, the part of the climax is set in, like, a building site that they never built anything on for a really long time. So you could go to Sydney and see the exact same building site that a man in a purple Halloween mask once stood in, portraying the terrifying antagonist Ivan Ooze.
So, Richie, what's the code word for this episode?
They have code words now as well?
Everything's gonna have code words.
But what, we have to decide what they do.
No, because it's like, that's not how life works. Like, if you wait to do something until you actually decide what it does and have a plan, you'll never do anything. So just do it.
That's true.
Like, if we actually had a plan for these podcasts, would we even have recorded one?
Yeah, that's true, yeah. No, we wouldn't have.
No. So what's the code word, Richard?
Yeltsin?
Okay. Sounds good. And I guess that's it for the podcast.
Once again, like, it ended and then we got a second wind and it just kept going.
I know. It's like, it ended about 27 minutes ago and then we just kept going. Yeah, check out stuff in the description. And,
Goodbye, everyone.
bye. You guys guys remember in Russia, you bought a dandy?
Yes!
Что покупал?
Dandy.
Do you remember
Yes.
dandy? Can you tell me about the dandy? Where did you buy it?
Where?
Where?
In the store?
So what were the first games you played? Какие первые игры?
Tetris.
Tetris.
Tetris. And
Yeah.
and you also
Tanks. No,
Tanks.
Tetris was
Me,
first.
I played only Tetris.
Did you like it?
Yes, we spent whole night to play Tetris. We even was late at work
All
because
country played Tetris.
we was late at work because of Tetris.
You were late to work because of
Yeah.
Tetris. All Russia was playing Tetris.
Yes. Even at work we played it.
Even at work? Did you have dandies at work?
No, it was
No.
computer.
You
First
had
computer.
computers
We
at
bought
work?
computer and played
To play
Tetris.
Tetris?
Yeah.
You bought a
You
computer.
Can't play without TV.
No, we played
Without-
at work on computer.
No,
First computer, it was Tetris and was line at work.
You had a lineup at work to play
Yes.
Tetris
Yes.
on your computer. You played other games than
No,
Tetris. You
no,
played
Tetris
tanks.
and Tanks, yeah.
Can you tell us about the game Tanks? Про что эта игра была?
It's about the tanks. It's 120 levels. You have one tanks. My
20
enemies has 20 tanks.
And who was the enemy?
I don't know,
Okay.
fucking computer.
Okay, thank you.